exciting to chew. Bacon fest, we're expecting you. And love, Iowa bacon love.
We recommend listening to the CW Pod with a glass of Steeple Ridge Bourbon. Grown, distilled, well-rested, and bottled in Erling, Iowa. Now from the Channel Seed Studios, this is the CW Pod, fueled by Steeple Ridge.
You know, golf is a good whiskey drinking sport, not when you're playing it, but when you're watching it. I don't feel like chugging Busch Lights or anything like that. I feel like sipping on a glass of Steeple Ridge Bourbon, baby. My name is 𝗙cie𝗰𝗶𝗿. Welcome to CW Pod. Different show this week, but we are still, as always, presented by the Lonely Oak Distillery and Steeple Ridge Bourbon. It is Masters Week, and okay, so this isn't really local. There is a local tie at the end of this with an author that I interviewed today. His name is Timothy Gay, and he's coming out with a new biography on Rory McIlroy, who I think is a fascinating sports figure. I love reading about golf more than I enjoy playing it, probably more than I enjoy watching it. But Rory McIlroy is just an incredible figure. There's so much depth to this guy. And I'm really looking forward to Tim's book, which is coming out in May. We'll talk about that. A little bit of a preview of the Masters here, but this is more of a really in-depth look at just a fascinating, iconic sports figure in Rory McIlroy. Timothy Gay, though, has written a bunch of other books, and he spent a bunch of time in the state of Iowa writing about Bob Feller as well. So we do localize this towards the end of the interview. I think I had a ton of fun doing this. I hope that you guys kind of enjoy it as we take a little break from the college sports scene here for a week. I want to remind everybody, when you are betting on the Masters this weekend, to remember our friends at 𝗀cie Sports Iowa. We went through it. Van Winkle and I did this on Sunday. You'll get like 150 to 100 points better odds on 𝗀cie than you're getting in a lot of the other spots. You can go and look for yourself. I'm not making this up for them. We were going player by player, and it is fantastic. So you just better odds. 𝗀cie Sports Iowa. Download the app today. We appreciate that. And let's do this. Let's have some fun. This is Timothy Gay. His new biography on Rory McIlroy comes out in May. And I thought this was the perfect time to bring Tim on and to talk a little Masters, talk a little Rory McIlroy here on the CW Pod. All right. Well, it's Masters Week, as we noted in the intro, and I'm excited about this next guest. I get a lot of these authors who I don't know who will send me promotional packets, and usually it doesn't interest me that much. But when I saw Timothy Gay's book on Rory McIlroy, really, really piqued my interest. I love reading about golf more than I love playing golf, probably more than I love watching golf because of all the great...
That makes two of us, Chris. Yeah.
That's great. That makes me feel good. Tim,
Yeah.
I've read probably more golf books than I have maybe any other sport. I don't know, right up there with college football, probably. What is so fascinating about it to you, about these characters?
Well, especially the Rory McIlroy character. I root for Rory not because he's Irish, but because I'm Irish. And I have been fascinated with him since he made his debut in major championship golf as an 18-year-old at Carnoustie in Scotland, and was the only amateur to make the cut and won the silver medal at the 2007 Open Championship. I find everything about Rory fascinating, including his swing, which is a beautiful thing to behold. I don't know if you're a fan of Rory's swing, but it's gorgeous, and it's something that has been analyzed by all kinds of people all across the spectrum of golf to try to figure out the physics behind such a small guy hitting the ball so long.
I like stories. The journalist to me, I just like stories, and I don't. John Rahm, if you were like, who's your favorite golfer? He had a condition as a kid, a club foot, and my daughter was born with one, so I've like gravitated to him and kind of rooted for him.
Yeah.
I rooted for Phil to get his Grand Slam. I remember back, I was like, I wanted David Duval to get that major. I root for the
Sure.
stories in golf, and there's
Yeah.
no better story in golf right now than Rory McIlroy chasing this Grand Slam.
Yeah, Jordan Spieth, of course, is chasing one too, and it's going to be interesting to see if who's the first, and either of them can get it. But you're right; there is something about major championship golf that really stirs the soul, and there's nothing better than Masters Week, especially a Masters where it looks like the weather is going to be interesting factor this week.
Timothy Gay, Rory Land, the up and down world of golf's global icon, is coming out in May. We'll get to more on that real quick. I'm going to Ireland for the first time coming up in August.
Good for you. You'll love the place. You'll never want to leave. Where are you going?
Well, Iowa State has a game. They're playing in the kickoff out there in Dublin.
Oh, terrific.
So I think I'm going to stay for about 12 days.
Excellent.
Me and my family are going, and we
Beautiful.
are going to fly into Dublin. We're going to travel up north for a
Yeah.
few days, spend a few days up there. And then,
By all means, get to Belfast, take
Okay.
the tour of the formerly very troubled neighborhoods in Belfast. It makes for fascinating history and sociology, but also get to Hollywood, which is the town that Rory grew up in, 7 miles northeast of Center City, Belfast, a beautiful little community on Belfast Lock. You'll just love exploring the place.
okay, that's a great tip. That's a great tip.
Yeah. Are you going to get to the southwest of Ireland,
Yes.
down to County Kerry and Cork?
So what we're going to do is then get back, meet friends in Dublin when they fly in, and then we have a great travel agent we've been working with,
Good.
and we're going to have a couple of Sprinter vans taking us on a tour around
Perfect.
Ireland for about 7 days leading up to the football
You'll
game.
love it. Save
can't
some
wait.
time for social life in the southwest of Ireland. In all of those pubs, they have live music, and you will love every minute of it. And it's
can't wait.
really part of the Irish experience, Chris, and you'll want to spend some time there. And trust me, my friend, you're not going to want to leave.
Have you chronicled Conor McGregor at all? Trying to think of famous Irish athletes.
Well, I'm not a big fan of that form of combat or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But Rory is. He's a huge fan. He and his caddy and buddy Harry Diamond went to Las Vegas to see one of Conor's many comeback. Hasn't he retired like 3 or 4 times, and he keeps on coming back?
Yeah. Got to get that paycheck.
Yeah, I think McGregor is probably pound for pound the most popular athlete in Ireland, but Rory would be a close second. And I think Shane Lowry, Rory's great pal, would be a pretty close third.
So let's get to this book, and well first of all let's stay really close to it because the Masters does tee off tomorrow. I'm interviewing
does.
Tim right now. It's about 9:00 Central Time for everyone who is watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast network. Second in the odds right now to win, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Tim. I've been rooting for Rory to win this for a while, and I do the pools like everybody.
Yeah, sure.
I've fallen into this trap before, where I come tea time on Thursday. I'm like, Rory, let's go, let's get it. I kind of feel like he might be cursed there. What do you think?
Yeah, he is a little bit cursed. A little black cloud has followed Rory McIlroy around Augusta National since his very first Masters, which was 2009 as a 19-year-old. In the second round, the Friday round at the 2009 Masters, Rory got it to 4 under. His name jumped up onto the leaderboard. Think about it. With the time difference, that meant it was a Friday night happy hour time and beyond in Ireland, and the entire island was rooting for him. He birdies 15 to go 4 under. He put a ball in the water at 16, which frustrated him, and then he hit a bad tee shot at 18, found a greenside bunker at 18, did not get his first bunker shot out of the sand, and angrily kind of kicked at the sand. And that got him crosswise with Fred Ridley, who was then the chairman of the rules committee at Augusta. And thus ensued about a 4-hour soap opera where the Masters Brain Trust contemplated whether or not they needed to either penalize or maybe suspend Rory, since he had signed a scorecard that did not include, the penalty for, trying to materially improve his lie in the sand. Anyhow, they chose not to suspend him, but it was a rough 4 hours on a 19-year-old kid. Since then, nothing has quite come together for him at the Masters. All these years later, this will be his 17th Masters. He's never come down the stretch on Sunday with a legitimate chance to win. Remember the 2011 collapse? As a 21-year-old, he had a 4-shot lead on Sunday morning that quickly got away, and then his trip through Amen Corner was nightmarish. A pull drive at 10 led to a ultimately triple bogey. Then he had all kinds of driving problems, hit an awful shot, hit at 15, struggled all the way in, ended up shooting an 80 and finishing tied for 16th when he went into Sunday 4 shots clear of the field.
What does he have to do, in your opinion, to break through? Is it mental? It
is all mental. I think he needs to focus more clearly than he has in the past. That's not just me saying it. It's Nick Faldo and Jack Nicklaus, other experts saying it. Nicklaus says the issue with Rory is really twofold. First, he does not recognize that there are certain shots at Augusta National that Nicklaus calls red light shots. You have to be ultra careful and ultra conservative. They require 1,000% concentration. That's been an issue for Rory in the past. Second, I think there's something about Augusta that deludes golfers of Rory's caliber into thinking that they can overpower the course. You can't. You've got to pick and choose at Augusta. You've got to channel your inner Ben Hogan and play underneath the hole, smart shots, not think about dramatic or bold golf swings the way Rory tends to sometimes, but smart, conservative shots. And understand you cannot win the Masters on Thursday or Friday, but you sure as heck can lose it. And way too many years, Rory McIlroy has lost the Masters and lost his supporters like 𝗀cie𝗰𝗋𝗄𝗏.
That's why I don't like picking him in my pools, because so many times I've been out on Thursday.
Oh, yeah. And that makes two of us. We've all been there. But the deeper I got into my research with Rory, the more I talked to fellow players, commentators, correspondents, caddies, core followers, the more I realized that just about everybody thinks that Rory sometimes loses his focus. Golf is, as Yogi Berra said about baseball, 90% half mental. It's all, what did Bobby Jones say? Golf is played in the toughest 6 inches in the world, the distance between your ears. I think Rory is now beginning to recognize that he's his own worst enemy. And I don't know if you caught his press conference yesterday, but he seemed composed, less excitable. He was more deliberate in the way he talked and presented things. So let's hope that's a good harbinger for his mental approach over the next 4 days.
As I mentioned to you earlier, I get caught up with the characters of golf. Shipnuck's book on Phil was amazing. Like these guys are just. It's kind of like why I like Formula One racing too, because it's like this world that I don't belong in. I'm a redneck from Southwest Iowa, so it's like I'm never going to own a Rolex.
Right.
I'm never going to be on a yacht, that type of thing. So it fascinates me. And I see, and this is why I'm really excited to read your book, Rory Land, The Up and Down World of Golf's Global Icon, because Tiger has all of his issues, and I almost think unfairly like the analyst in me, we almost all just, okay, well, this guy's gone. Rory McIlroy, step up. We're going to put you on the video games. We're going to do all. And it's kind of unfair. I mean, when you think about how dominant and how great Tiger was at that time, maybe the greatest of all time. And then we're just going to hand it off to this teenager. And like at the time, we're all like, oh, this kid is a disappointment. But I don't like looking back on it. I just don't know if that was entirely fair.
No, it's not entirely fair. And if you think about it, his majors, Rory's major championships, may have come too easily and too young for him. And he had some weaknesses in his game, mainly short game, chipping, pitching, and putting, that needed to be addressed when he was in his early to mid 20s. But it's tough to think you've got weaknesses or vulnerabilities in your game when you're winning major championships. And he won them big. Remember at Congressional in 2011, he won by 8 shots. At the PGA at the Ocean Course at Kiawah, he won by 8 shots. He broke Jack Nicklaus's scoring records at the PGA Championship. Those are, scoring records, Chris, that only get broken once a blue moon in professional golf. He was the youngest U.S. Open champion since Bobby Jones 9 decades before. He then won 2 majors in 2014. He won the Open Championship at Royal Liverpool. He won, I think, only by 2 shots, but the truth is he had a comfortable working margin virtually all 4 days. And then he won coming from behind at Valhalla, the PGA Championship in 2014. Just a few weeks later, in between, won the 𝗀•/𝗙cie event at Akron, the old at Firestone. So just a incredible series of wins for someone so young. He and Nicklaus and Woods were the only ones to have won 4 majors before the age of 26 in golf history. But the truth is, what makes his full swing so brilliant, that radical shoulder turn that reminds Tom Watson of Sam Snead, the beautiful hip turn that reminds Andy North and a lot of other people of Ben Hogan, this incredible amalgam of these 2 great golf swings, that gets him into trouble in his wedge game. Especially, I think it's the hips tend to fire, and either he gets ahead of the ball on little, what Nick Faldo calls fiddly shots, or he gets slightly stuck and behind it, which causes pushes to the right. He's working on that. You saw the evidence of that this year at Ponte Vedra during the playoff. Remember that? Mm-hmm. He at 17, the Island Green, he hit that beautiful feathered 9-iron. He admitted later that that was a shot he did not have in his repertoire until recently. Butch Harmon last summer worked very hard with Rory about taking the club back less radically, chopping off his follow through, and hitting the ball with greater touch. So far, so good. We'll see if he can keep that going at Augusta this week.
Tim, if it's mostly mental, like you believe, physically he still has it, and if he's working with Butch Harmon, and there's reason to be bullish on, if you go through a lot of Rory's progression, if he could clear that mental, I mean, could we see a kind of a second stint of Rory McIlroy's career with major championships? You think, is that possible, or is the competition gotten too good? How would you handicap that?
Well, Chris, you're right. The competition has gotten much better. I think it's much deeper, much stronger than it was in Palmer and Nicklaus's day. I think it's fair to say that once Tiger became the world's dominant player, people were intimidated by him. He was such a menacing presence on the golf course. So was Nicklaus. So was Hogan in the old days. Rory just doesn't have that kind of intimidation. He's a sensitive guy, thoughtful guy, loves laughing and being one of the guys. I think Tiger and Nicklaus sort of detached themselves from the rest of the field in many ways. Rory is, wants to be liked and enjoys social settings a lot more than those guys did in their playing days. So he's a different kind of guy, but I think he may have figured something out. The near miss at Pinehurst, those painful short putts that he missed on the 70th and 72nd holes at Pinehurst to give the U.S. Open to 𝗙ecie𝗰𝗶𝗹 last year, I think may have caused him to do some serious soul searching. And he, I think, now knows that he's got to fully concentrate. My sense at Pinehurst last year was that he worried too much about 𝗙ecie𝗰𝗶𝗹 instead of just focusing on his game. The key down the stretch at a U.S. Open is make par. Any way you can, make a par, avoid bogeys. Sadly, he bogeyed 3 of the last 4 holes, and I think it was more mental than physical.
The other aspect of his career that cannot be avoided is the LIV Golf situation. Yes. And when you, as a biographer of his, walk me through that, watching that over the last 4 or 5 years, and Rory really taking the stand that he did, and just everything that has happened. Were you surprised by that? Walk us through it.
Not surprised that Rory took such a strong moral position on LIV. Was surprised that he backtracked as quickly as he did and kind of got all over the map on LIV. I think he hurt his credibility, hurt his stature within the game because of them. There's a reason, Chris, the book is subtitled The Up and Down World of Rory McIlroy.
Yeah.
Because he's on the course, he tends to be kind of erratic. Off the course, he's been conflicted on LIV, on the Olympics, on a lot of different issues, on the distance that the modern golf ball travels, on trying to moderate the length of the modern driver and all that stuff. He's kind of been all over the place, and Rory has a tendency to get very wrapped up in his conviction of the moment, and he did that on LIV. He got too outspoken, too critical of his colleagues who went to LIV. Not everybody in life has the off-course commercial earnings potential of Rory McIlroy. He is, as I say in the subtitle, golf's global icon. Every year he triples, quadruples the income he makes on the course with commercial endorsements and appearance money and all the rest. Very few golfers fall into that category. I think Rory on LIV failed to recognize what his peers were going through. And he got way out on a limb. And he also was, I think, naive. He's admitted he was the sacrificial lamb. He was naive about what the PGA Tour Commissioner Monahan and what Monahan's corporate board advisors were doing behind the scenes in negotiating with the Saudis without Rory's knowledge or consent. Poor Rory was, had the rug pulled out from under him in June of 2023 when the so-called framework agreement with the Saudi PIF officials was announced. Now think about that, Chris. It's been 22 months. 22 months, man, and we are no farther along to any kind of compromise, working arrangement, rapprochement, call it what you will. It's still stuck. It's still at an impasse. And Rory has now taken himself out, although since Rory is so outspoken, it's hard for him to stop talking about it. In the book, I advise him strongly to stick to Scottish aphorism. You never regret what you don't say. Yeah, he says.
It's a good tip for everybody.
Yeah, it's a real good tip for everybody. I think anybody graduating from college, entering the workforce, should be forced to write that down 100 times before they take their first job out of college. And the other sort of suggestion I have for Rory is, I'm sure you've seen the Broadway show Hamilton. Remember at the beginning what Hamilton's buddies tell him? Talk less, smile more. Mm-hmm. You want to be effective in this life. You want to choose very carefully what public messages you articulate and what issues you champion. You got to be careful. You don't want to be out there on an island. And Rory put himself on an island on LIV, and he now regrets it.
Yeah, as you said, especially when the powers that be are negotiating and you don't know anything about it, and that's a really tough deal.
Yeah, there's a wonderful moment in March of 2023. That is just a couple of months before the PGA Tour cut their framework deal with the Saudis. Rory was on a podcast, and the podcast guys just happened to be talking about the show, the series Succession, which is kind of a satirical takedown of corporate America. And Rory amazed the hosts on the podcast with his knowledge of every twist and turn, the backstabbing, the recrimination, all that stuff. And 2 months later, he didn't seem to know what was going on. He was done in by the Wall Street Sharpies, who were working with Monahan in the same way that characters on Succession were done at. There's an irony to all of that.
So my co-host it's funny. He was very excited that I was having you on because he doesn't like Rory because of the hopping around. He thinks he's a hypocrite. I tend to look at it. It builds depth in his character to me, and it humanizes him, and that's. I didn't like Rory because I wasn't even a Tiger guy, to be honest. Again, I just kind of root for these characters, and I root for great stories. It's how Rahm's the only one I've ever been like attached to, and it's because of the sentimental thing. It's not like I know the guy But I love the humanization of Rory, though, that he kind of steps in it. Because it's like I step in it all the time. Like I'm always doing. I said stuff when I was in my 20s that I wish that I wouldn't. Right, and it makes me kind of root for him.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm the same way. And the thing about Rory is that he owns up to mistakes. He's not afraid to admit his own frailties. What I really admire about him is that he's not afraid to admit his nervousness at times, his anxieties. He's very candid with the self-help books he reads, the therapy he gets from the likes of 𝗺𝗶. Remember 2 years ago at Augusta, it was supposed to be Roy's finally big breakthrough year. He was coming in with great momentum. Very ostentatiously, he flies 𝗺𝗶, the world's leading sports psychologist, to Augusta to help him deal with the mental challenges of getting over the hump at the Masters. What happens? Rory played awful on Thursday and Friday, missed the cut by a bunch, left Augusta with his tail between his legs. I don't know what 𝗺𝗃 did for the rest of the weekend, whether he stuck
Get that guy out of the room.
Yeah, and you'll notice that this year, Rory isn't doing that. I don't know if you caught the 20-minute press conference yesterday. He normally arrives at the Masters with some new mantra, some new philosophy he's embraced through some self-help or self-awareness book. There was none of that yesterday. Instead, just calm, sort of talking about Augusta history and the changes that were necessitated to the course by the storm damage that hit last fall. It's a different looking Augusta. I don't know if you've seen the pictures, Chris, but 11 looks different. 10T looks different. 3 looks a little bit different. And 3 is Rory's great nemesis he's got several nemesis at Augusta. But number 3, as I say in the book, drives me crazy because he hits these booming drives to that short par 4, but it sucker punches you into believing that what you want to do is drive it up close to the green. I think he'd be better off just hitting an iron and giving himself something of a full pitch, especially now that he's learned to sort of feather his wedges and 9-irons a little bit. But he has this tendency to be 10, 15 yards short of the green and then hit this awful looking chip that screeches off the back edge of the green, and he ends up making either a tough 4 or an embarrassing 5 after a perfect drive. that hole looks quite a bit different now with all the tree damage.
Interesting. Well, hopefully Rory's in it on Sunday, and that would make it a lot more interesting for me. Rory Land comes out in May. Do you have an exact date? What date is it?
It's May 13th. It'll be in bookstores. Of course, you can pre-order it.
I already did.
Be an author. You did. Okay.
Yep. I'm locked in, baby.
Right. Exactly. Do what all listeners do. What Chris just said he did. Order on pre-order on Amazon.
So I wanted to, when we were emailing back and forth setting this up, you've spent some time in Iowa. So tell me about your history with Bob Feller and reporting on the icon of Van Meter, Iowa, tiny little Van Meter, Iowa, but we've got another icon from right down the road.
Yeah. Loved every inch of Van Meter. Had the honor of meeting Mr. Feller the year he sadly passed away. He was at spring training. Back then, the Indians, now the Guardians, did their training in Florida at Winter Haven. And I went down to spring training that year, had just a delightful couple of hours interviewing Bob about the book I was writing, which was his involvement in the great interracial baseball exhibitions that took place in the 30s and 40s before Jackie Robinson integrated the big leagues in 1947. Feller is a teenager, prodigy phenom for the Indians, was heavily involved in those exhibition games that took place usually after the season ended in the fall. After World War II, he helped organize the great Feller Satchel Paige tour, interracial tour against Feller and the All-Stars. So it was sort of his group of All-Stars flying all over the country to play Satchel Paige and his All-Stars. It not only opened the country's eyes to the need to integrate baseball, it also opened Major League Baseball's eyes to the potential of the California market. He flew out to the West Coast. This was 1946, using airplanes, very unusual back then. And Major League Baseball realized they had to expand to the West Coast. It took another decade, of course, before the Dodgers and Giants went out there. But they made baseball realize that they had to get west of the Mississippi River. Feller was in many ways a pioneer of both things, both integration and the expansion of baseball. He was also just a terrific guy, sort of man's man, kind of a John Wayne character, a fabulous guy with an incredible photographic memory. He asked me where I was from. I explained Northwestern Pennsylvania, and he immediately said, "Oh, I played a exhibition game in 1950, whatever, in Corry, which is the little town just west of Warren, where I'm from."
That's
fabulous
incredible
guy. And let me just say, if I could, a couple of other things about Bob Feller and Van Meter. First of all, the barn at his home in Van Meter is where it belongs in the National Register of Historic Places. That's where he and his dad, would practice, and Bob would throw against that barn door by the hour when he was a kid. I've been out to the family farm. It's just a beautiful place. I got very lucky in my visit to Van Meter because a high school teacher at Van Meter High just happened to be in his classroom when I kind of wandered through after school was over one day. He knew Feller and his legacy, and he took me to the old section of Van Meter High, and I looked at the photos of Feller, and I believe there were 9 other people in his high school graduating class of, I want to say 36 or 37. I might be off by a year there. But remember, by the time he graduated from Van Meter High, he had already been a big leaguer, had already filled major league ballparks. And he did it on a salary, a Class D minor league salary of $500.
Incredible.
That's all he was paid to fill ballparks in New York, in Cleveland, in Chicago, in St. Louis with the old Browns. It's just, it is a remarkable story. And in the 50s, he recognized the way he had been mistreated, if I can use that term.
Yeah.
And he became an advocate, a very strong advocate of eliminating the reserve clause, testified on Capitol Hill to that effect, and giving ball players greater freedom. Again, it took, a full generation and a half before free agency finally came. But ball players today owe a debt of gratitude to the great Bob Feller.
Well, and what I remember about him growing up in the state is if you saw Bob Feller, you would have to pay for an autograph. And he was kind of villainized for it. But once you go back and learn what you're talking about, you're like, oh, well, yeah, he probably deserves $10 for that. You're just going to go sell it on eBay anyways.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into this, but he had a lot of issues. His first wife, sadly, had substance abuse issues, and whatever money he had made in baseball kind of disappeared, taking care of her. It was not a good situation for him. So he needed to make money in the offseason, which is why he barnstormed so aggressively. But when Satchel joined the Indians in the early 50s, when the great Bill Veeck was late 40s, when the great Bill Veeck was the owner of the Indians, he and Feller and Satch just became great friends. Satch used to call Feller Bob Rapid, which is, Feller's nickname, of course, was Rapid Robert. But Satch called him Bob Rapid. The other couple of other cool things about Feller is, as a high school kid, he was interviewed, I think in 1935, by a Des Moines radio personality named Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. And of course, Feller didn't remember being interviewed by a Des Moines radio guy because Ronald Reagan was not a big name back then. And Feller was interviewed by all kinds of different radio and print people as a teenager. So it didn't mean much to Feller. It meant a lot to Reagan. Reagan never forgot that moment. And years later, he would, regale people with stories about what a great kid Feller was, how proud he was to interview this prodigy from just down the road at Van Meter.
A lot of great history in our state, Tim. If you ever come back, you got my information. We'd love to show you around, okay?
Yeah, been to Ames briefly, as I mentioned before we came on air. I've also been, I don't want to get upset in any way, but I've also been to Iowa City and very much enjoyed that campus too. Loved both places.
It's a great state. We're very proud of it. And I really am looking forward to your book, Rory Land, which comes out May 13th. Thank you for your time and enjoy the golf this weekend. Hopefully we get some good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chris. Really enjoyed it, friend.
There you go. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Did a little something different today here in the Channel Seed Studios, talking golf. Maybe we'll do that once every 2 years on here, but I hope you enjoyed it. I did. I already bought the book, Rory Land, when it comes out in May. Thanks to Timothy for his time during a very busy time of year for a golf writer like himself. My name is Chris Williams. We'll be back next week, working on something big for next week. We'll hopefully get it pulled off for you, and we'll be back with more CW Pod. Again, it's busy weekend with the Masters. Hope you all enjoy it. Nice spring weather coming our way. We'll be back next week.